You better give me. You better. Sure.
I'm ready. We are ready.
I can
All right, good morning, everyone. We will call our February 26th, 2026 meeting to order. This public meeting of the Philadelphia Board of Pensions and Retirement is being conducted in person at the board's conference room and board's offices on the 16th floor of 2 Penn Center. Pursuant to section 21-1503 of the Philadelphia Code, electronic recordings of this meeting were made through Microsoft Teams conference technology and by audio recording. Electronic recording will be available to the public online on the board's website without charge within 10 days. Please note that you consent to such recording by attending, participating, or speaking at the meeting. Our first order of business today is a motion to adopt the rules of order that the board has approved and regarding first and public meetings that are recorded. The purpose is to help ensure that an accurate and complete recording of the meeting occurs to comply with the code requirements. Second item of business is to wish the executive director happy birthday.
Tough turns, boys.
And our second item is the motion to adopt the procedures for today's meeting made executive. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. Brian. Tanya. Sheila. Marsha. Approved. Sarah. Approved. Andrea. Approved. Willie.
Approved.
And Carol. Second item is to approve the meeting minutes from our January 26th meeting. Motion is made and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Brian. Tanya. Sheila. Marsha. Approved. Sarah. Andrea. Willie.
Approved.
And Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries unanimously. Moves us to item 3, to consider a motion to approve the consideration of 72 pension applications and 52 withdrawal applications to make and properly seconded. Hearing no discussion. Brian.
Approved.
Tanya. Rashida. Approved. Marsha.
Approved.
Sarah. Approved. Andrea. Approved. Willie. And Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries unanimously, and that moves us into section 4, case 4A. Motion to approve the service connected disability benefits for Maxine Oglesby was made and clearly accepted. Any discussion on 4A? Brian.
Denied.
Tanya. Rashida. Marsha.
Denied.
Sarah.
Denied.
Andrea. Willie.
Denied.
Carol.
Denied.
Motion failed 0-8. Case 4B, a motion to approve the service connected disability benefits for Tyrone Gatewood was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 4B? Brian.
Approved.
Tanya. Approved. Sheila. Marsha.
Approved.
Tara.
Approved.
Andrea. Approved. Willie.
Approved.
Carol.
Approved.
Motion carried 7-1. Case 4C, a motion to approve the service connected disability benefits for Jenny Stewart was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 4C? Brian. Tanya. Rashida. Marsha. Or D or 4C?
Oh, denied.
Sarah. Andrea. Willie.
Approved.
And Carol.
Approved.
The vote was 4-4, and so the motion fails. For B, a motion to approve the service connected disability benefit.
Saturday.
Sure, as chair, I can vote to deny, so motion fails 45.
Thank you.
For D, a motion to approve the service connected disability benefits for Kathleen Agnew was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on D? Hearing none. Brian.
Approved.
Tanya. Approved. Rashida. Approved. Marsha.
Approved.
Sarah.
Approved.
Andrea. Approved. Willie.
Approved.
And Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries unanimously. For E, a motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Francis Barkley is made and properly seconded. Any discussion on E? Brian. Tanya. Sheila. Marsha.
Denied.
Sarah.
Denied.
Andrea. Willie.
Want to stay with it?
And Carol.
Denied.
Motion fails 0-7 with one extension. Case 4F, the motion to approve the service connected disability benefits for William Hoffman was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on F? Brian?
Approve.
Tanya? Rashida? Marshall?
No.
Tara?
No.
Andrea? Willie?
Approved.
Approve.
Motion the vote was 4-4, and was chair will vote to deny, so the motion fails 4-2. For G, a motion to approve service connected disability benefits for G and Jerome was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on G? Hearing none, Guy.
No.
Either. No. Sheila. Marcia.
Denied.
Brad.
No.
Andrea. Billy.
Denied.
And Carol.
No.
Motion fails 0-8. For H, a motion to approve the service connected disability benefits for Dawn Jones, they are properly seconded. Any discussion on H? Brian.
Approve.
I'm approved. Rashida. And Marsha.
Approve.
Tara.
No.
Andrea. Approved. Will.
Approved.
And Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries 6-2. Case 4I, a motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Joseph McCabe was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on I? Brian.
Approve.
I'm approved. Rashida. Marsha.
Approve.
Tara.
Denied.
Andrea. Approved. Willie.
Approved.
And no.
Approve.
Motion carries 6-2. Case 4J, a motion to approve the service connected disability benefits for David Nelson was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on J? Brian.
Denied.
Aye.
Oh, denied.
Rashida. Denied. Marsha.
Denied.
Sarah.
No.
Andrea. Will. And Carol.
Denied.
Motion fails 0-8. 4K, motion to approve the service connected disability benefits for Maria Rosario was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on K? Brian.
Approve.
Fun. Rashida. Marsha.
Denied.
Sarah.
No.
Andrea. Willie.
Approved.
And Karen.
Approve.
The vote was 4-4, as chair will vote to deny, so the motion fails 4-5. 4L, the motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Benjamin Santiago Jr. was made and properly seconded. With any discussion on the L? Brian.
Denied.
Denied. Rashida. Marsha.
Denied.
Sarah. Andrea. Denied. Lily.
Denied.
Carol.
Denied.
Motion fails 0-8. Case 4M, a motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Robert Sweeney was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on M? Brian.
Denied.
Anya.
Denied.
Rashida. No. Marshall.
Denied.
Sarah.
No.
Willie.
Yeah, Marty. Denied. Denied.
Motion fails 0-7 with one extension noted. Case 4N. Motion to approve the service connected disability benefits for Yolanda R. Sanders was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on N? Hearing none. Brian.
Denied.
Tanya.
Denied.
Marcia.
Denied.
Sarah. Andrea. Willie.
Denied.
And Karen.
Denied.
Motion failed 0-8. 4O, a motion to approve the service of the disability benefits for John Egan was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on case 4O?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to table it. With some clarification.
There was an alternative motion. Is there a second?
Second that.
The revised motion to table case 4O for further clarification. Made and properly seconded. Any discussion on the revised motion? Brian. Tanya. Rashida. Marcia? On the motion to table, right?
Yes.
Approved.
Fair. Andre, approved. Willing,
Approved.
and Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries seven, the revised motion carries 7-1. For P, a motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Anthony Black was made and seconded. Any discussion on 4P? Brian?
Denied.
The Rashida? The Marcia?
Denied.
Sarah? The Andrea? Willie?
Denied.
And Carol.
Denied.
Motion failed 0-8. Is for Q, a motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Will Clark was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on Q? Brian?
Denied.
Rashida?
Denied.
Sarah? Andrea? Willie?
Denied.
Carol.
Denied.
Motion failed 0-8. For R, a motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Ray Florney was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on or on? Brian?
Approved.
Rashida? Marcia?
Denied.
Tara?
Aye.
Andrea? Billy?
Approved.
And Carol.
Approved.
Votes 4-4 as chair, 9, so the motion fails 4-5. 4S, motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Larry Gilliam was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on S?
On the motion for the Michigan Council to further clarification. I'm gonna make the same motion for T and for you if we can do that.
Josh, Mike, everyone. So there was a revised motion to table cases for S and U for the clarification. Was there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, so what questions do you have?
There's going to be selection or executive session. Vice listeners.
Oh,
Thanks for sharing. Is there any other discussion on the revised motion to table S and U? Brian?
Approved.
Approved. Rashida? No. Marcia?
approved.
Sarah? Approved. Andrew? Approved. Willie?
Approved.
Approved.
Motion carries 7-1. And that takes us to this 4B. A motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Joseph Welsh was made and properly seconded at this session on B. Brian?
Denied.
Shiva? Marcia?
Denied.
Sarah? No. Andrea? No. Willie?
Denied.
And Carol?
Denied.
Motion fails 0-8. For W, a motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Dexter D. Whitfield was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 4W?
Aye.
Denied.
Rashida? No. Marcia?
Denied.
Kara? No. Will?
Denied.
Kara?
Denied.
Motion failed 0-8. That moves us to case 5A. Motion to approve the application of Soroy Mission Article to have the factor pension calculated under plan 1A was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 5A? Brian? Brian? Marcia?
Denied.
Karen?
Denied.
Carol?
Denied.
Motion fails 0-8. This is to old business in case 6A, a motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Jessica King is made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 6A? Brian?
Approved.
Brian? Approved. Rashida? Approved. Marcia?
Approved.
Kara?
So
Andrea? Approved. Willie?
Approved.
And Carol?
approved.
Motion carries 7-0 with 1 abstention. 6B, a motion to approve the service connected disability benefits for Kevin Kubus was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on B, 6B? Brian?
Approved.
Brian? Approved. Rashida? Marcia?
Denied.
Kara? Andrea? Approved. Willie?
Approved.
Thank you.
Approved.
Motion carries 5-3. 6C, a motion to approve service connect with disability benefits for Richard Fitzgerald is made a properly seconded any discussion. And none, Brian, fine, approved. Rashida, approved. Marcia,
Approved.
Tara, approved. Andrea, approved. Lily.
Approved.
And Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries unanimously. 6D, a motion to approve the application for service connected disability benefits for Michael Hardcastle is made or properly seconded. Any discussion on 6D? Brian,
Approved.
Anya, approved. Rashida, Lina, Marcia,
Approved.
Kara,
Approved.
Andrea, approved. Lily,
Approved.
and Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries 7-1. 6E, a motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Wilhelmina Allen is made or properly seconded. Any discussion on T? Brian, Brian, Dimmer, Rashida, Marcia,
Denied.
Kara, and then Andrea, Dimmer, Will,
Denied.
and Carol.
No.
Motion failed 0-8. Please 6F, a motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Stephen Card was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 6F? Brian,
Denied.
Tanya, Rashida, and then Marcia,
Denied.
Tara, Andrea, Will, and Carol.
No.
Motion fails 0-8. And finally, case 6G, a motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Wyatt M. Slocum was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on G6G? Brian?
Approved.
Tanya? Approved. Rashida? Marcia?
Approved.
Sarah? Andrea? Approved. Will?
Approved.
And Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries 7-1. Moves us to new business and the executive director's report.
Oh, yeah, we've been through, there's a conference called the Prism Conference, if you all know, I said, with the movie station. It's a conference for tech professionals, for pension payroll professionals. It's an organization that provides you as a member of information and projects out here right now, but we like the opportunity for projects to attend that. And possibly one other select member to attend, who's working on the pension modernization project. So, you guys with that is here. Secondly, there is the annual Department of Labor and Industry for Pennsylvania, a workers' compensation conference that they held. We usually send someone to that. It's usually Sharon. And, because they do themselves for workers' comp with some type of disability, we find it to be helpful. So we have the two or three information copies we have here. We have not heard back from papers yet concerning our request to present it in the spring forum. We should be getting knowledge receipt of our request. We should get back from that soon. We date for our city council budget here. It's a little late this year. We usually have the date by now, but I let you go. Told it's likely to be the end of March, beginning of April. That's usually the longest it's ever. I'm not starting, but I'm let you know. So.
Make a motion. What else to go to? To the prison board at this time.
You want to include Prachi and
Yeah.
or staff?
Prachi or staff. Yes.
That's all.
Thank you.
Possibly a quarter.
Board member.
Yeah, board or staff.
Right? Now, one other thing concerning technology.
Motion made and properly seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries unanimously.
One other thing concerning technology, we have to work with to work for the other responsibilities, tabs, going to do her spot. Anything else is interested? Volunteer, everything is done.
Oh, I know.
Okay, so unfortunately, to we'll go from there. People is one review. So you don't have five, which makes me. Next meeting should be up high.
Okay.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you.
So, Fred. So back in January, I submitted a request to go to the New York Mass event, the 28th annual Wall Street Hall of Fame reception, and I was told I had to wait to the board meeting, but I don't see it on the agenda.
Not
Yes,
just.
yeah, my apologies, yeah, that's the annual NASP conference, Hall of Fame conference that, I believe Carol's attended in past years, and the city is also a member of the, NASP group. Sponsors that space there. Well,
The event is March 10th, by the way, so, I mean, I feel it, but I don't know, I had to wait to the board, but I had to wait to the board, but,
Great. Is there a motion to include that event?
anybody can go, it's not me, so.
Do you board member like to make a motion?
I'll make that.
For a second. All right, all those in favor? Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Any other new business? Ellen, any items of note on the litigation settlement?
No, not particularly.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna adjourn, it's like a 2-minute break or 5-minute break before third comp, but we have a full back half of the agenda, so I want to try and get people back quickly so we can also get the action ready set up. Back. At 10 o'clock.
So, yeah.
Right, thank you.
I'll put it with you.
Yeah, no, I apologize. Always have to, I mean, everybody's.
They used to.
All right, good morning again. We're gonna get started with the third comp in the interest of time and try to get through some items for the finance director gets here. So first item was approval of the January meeting minutes. Made, motion made them. The seconded and discussion on the meeting minutes. Here and Brian. Francois. Marcia, approved, there, Andrea, approved, Lily,
Approved.
and Carol. Motion carries unanimously. Kristen, Ina, and jump into the activity report.
Yes, the only thing I wanted to mention before Dina started is you should have received this in your weekly notes last night that the Vault loan program was set up yesterday. So folks should be able to model these for the back section of the loan yesterday. Completed all the paperwork. If any member or anybody has any issues with it, just reach out to staff. But it should be set up and ready to last night.
So do we have to change our policy for
We changed the plan document.
the plan document?
We changed, staff changed this, to conform with the board, so.
First, okay.
Good morning, everyone. The ending asset balance as of January is $2,377,940,646. It's about 1.3% increase from the month of December. Participants that have an account balance is 28,383. That's 57 more than the month of December. Active participant is 21,000, excuse me, 330. That's 16 more. New enrollments received in January, 145. When I compared it to January of last year, we're already 5% ahead of 2025. So we're leading the way already. So that's great news. The 401 plan, it's $7,527,484. So, again, just a 1.7% increase. In terms of participant count, 3,073. We did see 11 less. That's because of transfer out and rollover out. So that's why the number went down. And then 2 folks separated in service. The number of participants, this is new metrics, the number of participants that do not have, excuse me, 457B account and maybe missing out on the match is 6 individuals. I want to thank Josh for identifying and helping us reduce that number to really look at the folks that are active and are missing out on the city's match. We're proactively reaching out to those individuals. It's only 6, but we've been able to identify by department. So we'll continue to make progress on that.
It's incredible.
That is incredible. That is great.
That is great.
Yeah.
It's on this report.
Oh, is that- Yeah.
Oh, right.
The Philadelphia Parking Authority, 676 no new enrollments there, and the Housing Development Corporation, 49 no new enrollments there. When we look at the Roth, a lot of attention has been on the Roth. It's 142 million, which compromises about 6% of the total plan assets, and it continues to grow. At the end of January, 10,779 participants. That's 134. If I look at the year back, exactly at this time, we had only 8,600 participants, almost 2,000 increase.
Oh, wow.
So it's really, really gaining momentum.
Mhm.
And 38% of participants are utilizing the Roth, and we'll probably see more of that. And now with the loan activation, they have access to their accounts as well. When we look at percentage contributions, it's 4,157. That's 49 more than the month of December, which is about 19% penetration. And I know the percentage is an important component to you folks, the percentage contributions. And when I looked at last year, around this time, we had only 2,800 folks, so almost 1,321 participants have elected to contribute towards a percentage contribution. Call volumes, 3,493, that's 111 more. And the online account is 23,044 participants, which is 81% penetration. In January, we saw more than 455 participants set up their online account. This is really important. In your hands, you see the retirement ratings brochure. I want to thank the Education Subcommittee and more importantly, recognize Fran, because this was his idea to create a guide, a retirement readiness guide, where all the information is in one area. So this allows folks that are nearing retirement to have access to all the information so they can make decisions easily. This is also available online, so they can access this information on the website as well.
What happens when you get home, you don't have to.
So, Dina, how is this gonna be? Is it on the website that people can pull it down?
They can view it on the website. We have tons of copies
Okay.
in the office, and it's also available. Absolutely, yep. And the reps also have copies of this.
You have hard copies?
Yeah.
Generally, I'll grab a case for my union people.
Yeah.
I'd like to get that or some
We're
level.
happy to
Yeah.
send to, and, everybody.
Yeah, everybody.
You can order that.
You work with Washer.
Yeah.
To put in HR, possibly get these to the HR directors.
Meeting. Yeah, that's a brilliant idea. And the other thing is our employee newsletter. OHR manages the employee newsletter, so that would be another opportunity, as well as each union's benefit platform. We could put this document on their platform also, so employees can readily pull it down. And then, let's see, what else am I thinking of? I think there's some other ideas, but I really love this idea. Yes, I would work with you, Dina. Yeah.
So how can the unions get copies of it for the union hall for when the members come down there and for when you do member orientation? Because I don't mean people, but not every HR person is still with it here. So the members don't always get what they need to get.
I agree.
Okay.
And so that's why I think Brian asked about getting it for fire, and I think we should try to get it for all the unions
Okay.
and also get it on your union, your benefits platform,
Right.
so people can pull it down at their own leisure.
Right.
You could work through me.
Okay, I work
Yeah.
with you, Matt. Okay, that works for me.
Matt and I, yeah.
Okay. Yes,
Matt and the team will make.
Okay.
everybody.
terrific. Yeah.
The other one, I just want to thank Prachi and staff and the education subcommittee regarding the 401(k)(5). This was really important. I know the control of this was something that was very important. So at NEOs, and Matt will talk more about it, but this is also available for distribution.
Is it online as well?
I'm sorry,
Is it online as well?
this one, no, this one is customized with graph charts, etc. So it's hard copy and PDFs. Matt, with the
Thank you.
I'm happy to answer any questions, but if there are none, I'm going to pass it on to Matt about the service activity.
Good morning. Hopefully everybody's surviving all the cold and snow weather. We're almost at the end of it. Speaking of somebody from the Midwest, it's almost over. But as we look at the team activity from January, getting back into full swing of things in 2026 after the holiday season, 15 group events with 473 total attendees. That includes workshops and the various NEOs. I do know that some of those had to be rescheduled from snow. And just as kind of as a sidebar too, our team was away for training for about a week in Texas. So some of that was rescheduled for their trainings, and we got back just ahead of the snowstorm. So we were all wondering if we're going to get trapped in Dallas, but we're getting back up into the full swing of things. Office activity, 284 phone calls, almost 70 walk-ins on the left. Out of the new employee orientations, 145 attendees, of which 129 were not enrolled. And then we were able to secure 56 enrollments in January through those NEOs. Again, all those are going to be increases from the December numbers because of the holidays and things of that nature. So we are kind of getting back into the swing of that. Webinars in January were contributing to a retirement plan, reviewing your account, and navigating market volatility, all provided by Don. our staff CFP. Again, those are always well attended. And they also lead to more one-on-one consultations with Don and with the local team. So that's the goal there is provide the education, re-engagement, and then provide that one-on-one experience for the employees in the space.
So Matt, before we go on to the next page, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So what do you think the target should be in terms of our ability? We can't make somebody join, but what could be our target in terms of when we have the new employee orientations in terms of the number of enrollees? And then my other question is, do we know from what areas new enrollees are from? I would suspect they're probably from uniform, more so than, I don't know. But I think we have to target particular employee groups a little bit harder, from a health, from a just a literacy perspective to ensure that they understand the value of it. Because if people wait 5 years, because I spoke to someone recently who had been here for 20 years and didn't even know anything about deferred comp. And that was an exempt person, which I was very surprised about. But anyway, how can we make that transition? Because 56 out of 145, maybe that's realistic. I don't know.
Yeah.
You're the expert better than me. But then if we understand what areas that they're coming from who are enrolling, so we can really target. And maybe ask those unions, what could we do differently to ensure that people understood the value of that participation, the value of, setting the table for the future.
Yeah. I would personally like to look back at the past numbers to be able to benchmark where that 56 is. It's hard for me to say kind of right off the cuff that's good or bad, if that's in line.
Okay.
But I agree with you that we can take a closer look at that. I know Sean's at the EC 33 NEOs all the time. I think last year he has no attendance at all his EC 33 workshops. Christina's at the EC 47. I think it's bi-monthly. I have those on my calendar as well. I think the Flyer does a really good job too of speaking of that compounding, right? So what he says, so if you're missing out, this speaks on 10 years. If you're missing out on 10 years, what that difference is. Of not only your own personal compounding, but the potential match that you might have missed out on. But we can dive deeper into that, and I'd be happy to reach out to the various union stewards and leaders to make sure that we're hitting all of those audiences as best as we can.
Okay, that would be great.
Well, I'll speak for Christina. So she has changed her presentation, and it is very acceptable. So they're not getting it because they don't really get it. She's speaking on a level I think that is easy for everybody to understand. And we should make her, examples and comparisons of why they should get it, why they shouldn't, where they're going to be at in 10 years, what they expect in 5 years. So her presentation is very good. Yes, it's hard. Because I go to all mine, so that's how I know.
Okay.
I'm at 47 presentation, except for like yesterday, whether I'll go out. I used to pay it, but outside that, I'm there every second and fourth Thursday.
Right.
And Christina did her presentation after we had the meeting has changed as to how she presented to people, and it is on a level where the people can understand. I haven't been in 33, and I don't know how they I don't know how they stuff it for sure.
Okay, good.
But
Yeah.
I can't say that Christina is doing it exactly that way.
Yeah, and I've had the ability to ride along with them at 47, at 33 with police and fire. They do try to make it relatable, particularly for employees that may be under that $65,000 annual threshold, because I think they do understand from a relatability standpoint that in some cases it can't be an either or decision. I can either put into deferred comp or I have to forego other things that I need in my personal life, especially if there's financial need there. So they use a lot of visualization, a lot of relatable topics that help them understand the importance of what they're really leaving on the table if they choose not to participate, whether it's if they're eligible for a match or not, but just the compounding that you start now at maybe $10 or $15 a paycheck, but if you wait 10 or 15 years in order to meet your goals, that $10 or $15 a pay may become $100 a pay, kind of using just examples similar to that, so as to explain why it's important to get in earlier rather than later.
I think for the example that you gave, I think one maybe happening is as we hire exempts, and because the exempts are highly based in employees, I wonder if there's good information that's going to be exempts boards and sunsets in the budget, but never really got that new employee orientation. The unions do a great job. We actually just transitioned a whole bunch of people from exempt to civil service. And you guys do an amazing job. Sorry, but you guys do too. I don't have to say that. But recently, you'll have the orientations, lockstep in schedules. You encourage people to attend. And you have all the information, you have some benefits people. I sometimes wonder how well we onboard and do it with exams, especially when there might be different onboarding procedures with different departments.
Well, right now they've changed. They have a whole onboarding process for exempts once a month for all employees. So typically that's the opportunity for exempts and non-reps to come. So every area actually has the opportunity. The Board of Pensions does have a representative. Shahid goes, and he does a presentation for the Board of Pensions about deferred comp and about whatever pension plans, temporary and everything. So there is that opportunity now, whether they participate or not. I don't know the answer, but the good news is you only have 6 people who are eligible and aren't. And maybe that person I was talking about was one of those people. So that's the good. Well, no, actually, she's not even in the new planner. But anyway, they have the opportunity. Now, whether our exempt people, what I find is they don't read anything and they don't go to anything. And so therefore, they miss out on a lot of benefit-related matters. And we find out at the 11th hour when they're in a crisis situation and we're trying to problems. I'm not going to get up down there, but it becomes
I think I have a lot of great points, and
Yes.
maybe I know we've got a lot to get to.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, we will. Yes, we will move on.
Thank you. Any other questions for Nationwide? Okay. Before we get to item 3 on the agenda, we're going to break and take an executive session. So let's ask those in attendance to please
Okay, go ahead.
exit the room. So we're going to discuss a legal matter, and we'll let you know when we should come back. I know that's not.
I know you're lying.
Right.
I know, what's that good?
Nor do I have a problem with the name, naturally.
Yes, I'm glad I got a face in the name.
Well, yeah, so I want to make sure you got your shoes on. I thought you meant to, I thought they said.
And these are the other people, yeah.
Yeah, those, right, and that little one finger thing.
Not in the least.
All right, well, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to call deferred compact. Are we back to session? We're back to session.
Thank you.
We got, we back to session.
Yes, we had an executive session to discuss legal matters. Now we're moving back to the first topic.
Try to keep the reports or the comments brief. I know we have the actuaries report. The first staff report is to review the fourth quarter mutual fund performance for Compound. 14 of the 25 funds ranked above median in a 3-year period, 11 of the 25 above median over 5 years, 16 of the 25 ranked above median in either the 3 or 5 year period. Staff has just 2 recommendations that are identical. Is that the Harbor Capital Appreciation Fund and the Blue Jennison Small Company Fund on watch. They both had some recent term underperformance, which is weighed on overall results. We don't believe it's indicative of any problems with the team or the strategy, but rather just the style and the conditions we've seen. For example, Harbor struggled before and bounced back, so we're not recommending any changes. Also, as you read the reports, couple of things. This will be the last report that you see advance in that they were previously moved. And a reminder that we previously accepted staff's recommendation for move the Goldman International Fund and the assets.
Same thing, this report that you do on the, the team.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then also the new burger fund was or turning me to prior meeting. That process will be completed. Second staff report deals with the Target Retirement Fund series. So as the board knows, there's a series of Vanguard funds in 10-year increments in the lineup. Upon review, staff believes adding additional funds in 5-year increments will be better for participant choice and support a consistent long-term framework for maintaining the series. I want to make clear that the recommended additions would only be to supplement the existing lineup and they would not replace any of the current options. Also note that no assets would be mapped or transferred as part of this thing, so these would just be new 5-year funds, the 35, 45, 55, and 65. And we think that would better align folks, perhaps in the middle, depending on their age, wouldn't have to go back to 60 or forward to 70 if they're more comfortable with something in the middle of those decades. We see this as good governance and something that a lot of other plans have done for their target date series. And so we're asking the board to consider adding those 4 target date funds. The next available deadline to request the changes is March 2nd, which is next week. Members would then be notified later in the month, and the new funds, again, no mapping, just the new fund options will be available.
These are the new funds, right?
Correct.
Any questions about that?
We would need a motion to add.
Yes.
I make a motion that we accept that application and target funds to the amount of.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
The motion is probably second. All those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried.
Thank you. And then the last staff report deals with the international equity options. So as a reminder, the board voted in December to remove the Goldman Sachs International Opportunities Fund from the lineup. We mapped assets to the International Stock Index. While that index provides low-cost international equity exposure, we did commit at that meeting to come back and discuss whether there should be a second actively managed option. So right now, when you have Dodge and Cox as an actively managed option, that's the index. We committed to come back with a second option. So we reviewed, Kristen, Lewis, other people on the team reviewed several active international strategies available on the platform. We narrowed it down to 3: MFS, DFA, and First Eagle. We're recommending adding MFS. Its strategies outperformed both its benchmarks and peers over all reported time periods. We believe it offers a balanced and more diversified approach than the other 2 options and Golden that I just mentioned. We briefly review the team and assets under management. That the MFS strategy provides a middle ground solution that's well aligned with the plan's long-term objectives. We think it offers, for example, greater flexibility and discretion than DFA, and it has a stronger growth orientation than First Eagle. We recognize it carries a higher management fee than passive options, as well as several of the active options, but the historical results have made up for that in benefits. Again, for those who have fee sensitivity or want low cost exposure, the index choice with Vanguard and Stonex. So we're recommending adding that, again, similar to what we just said for Vanguard. No assets would be capped. This would just be an additional choice for folks that replace Goldman. And same timeline as what we just reviewed, early March, second notification. Or notice to nationwide notification of participants later in the month. And then May 8th, it would be available to participants.
Any questions? Do we need a motion on your motion?
That's senseless.
Motion probably taken to accept the recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Any new business for account? Old business? And approve about the your adjournment, your adjournment. And. Yeah. Wonderful. Let's go right into that. Well, I got one year covered. Okay. First item up is approval of the minutes from January 2026. Your motion? There's that. Moving properly seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Now we get to the best part of the year. Our report.
Pardon?
Oh, okay.
A minute, Becky said a minute, a minute. So it's what you always get. That's why I got you to give you lots of.
I can do it again. Until we left. No, this one. So, oh, so this is before. So it's actually just. So this, you don't have to wait. You don't. She, to me, it sounds like she.
Gotcha.
Waited, that telephone is up. So it sounds like, to me, this sounds like she wasn't eligible. Something.
Come down here.
I always like to do this bit of.
Yeah, I see you, Brian, like.
Yeah. Show you right after. I'm gonna show you right.
Okay, all right.
It's a quote from you.
For me? Get out of here.
Well, it will be. If you're okay with it.
All right.
Hi, you're all right.
The city's matches the same.
Yes, I think that. The Bible. Oh, you're not. So we had a house that now is really, like, the river, like.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So it's- They were, give the city the back. They would start like putting decorations, putting our porch, like that's how they fill up little toy stuff. And put that bind it out. We all my hair said I was so still. But when I got old, my mom told me I had to open up, especially public vacation. They put so much money this year, and then when I saw scrolling the city, and I figured what happened, that was just a and like, before they go, that way I can see, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People look like, well, you say,
Right.
who's the dog? I'm not looking.
I'm trying to. I feel like they leave it up front.
When you start going, then they see the money. That's why I say you check out.
That's good. All right, ladies and gents, we gonna start.
That's what we.
Yeah. There we go.
Thank you, Willie.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry, Jack, I'm on.
Talk about our July 1, 2025 annual evaluation report with me and part of your firearm team, Brett Warren and Zach Allen. I'm Anu Patel. So we'll jump right in. So today, we'll start with an overview. This is similar to what we've presented before. We'll start with an overview. We look at historical trends because we want to understand how did we get to where we are. Then we'll look at valuation results, which is where we're at now, 2025. We'll do risk assessment, salary discussion, and then stress testing, which we do is the most important part about where we going to get in the future.
So, no, wait, that's 1 second. Had this at public forum, and Brian did this at the forum. He was great.
Slide.
Brian, would you like to?
I sit there half a mile. They love the grant.
But did you do that? So,
No. Harvard Review 1965. The attendant. Now down.
But you explained that.
Uh-oh.
so this is something that from 1965. So this is a pension tank. The size of the tank represents liabilities. You know, this is how we look at a pension fund, and we thought it's a good idea.
Notice they're not giving Harvard their copyright.
That's where we were. The green part of the tank are the assets. And, you know, over time, we expect that the liabilities would grow as members accrue benefits. And so the assets grow as contributions come in. Contributions come in, investment and.
Oh,
Look at that.
2026.
You made a budget.
And at the same time, we're paying back.
56 years.
We want to have the tax be full. Yes, 100% funded.
Yes,
So we have sufficient benefits to pay out for all these benefits. As actuaries, our role is to use actuarial methods and assumptions to determine how much money needs to be contributed. So there's always enough money to pay out. To so we think that's a simplification of what a pension is. So jumping into the overview, market value of assets for July 1, 2025, it was a great year, 4.69% return. So the market value of assets increased from 8.56 billion to 9.62 billion. For purposes of contributions, we would use a smooth asset value. It's called actuarial assets. There's a 10-year smoothing, and really it's market returns can be very volatile from year to year. The actuarial method or the actuarial assets will smoothen out the volatility to reduce that same volatility being passed on to the contributions. For budgeting purposes, we don't want the contributions going up and down as the markets do. So on the 10-year smoothing asset return was 7.01%. The assets went up from 8.58 billion to 9.17 billion for the smooth asset value. And because that 7% is lower than what we expected at 7.3% for the prior year, there is a small loss on the assets for the smooth asset value. That's $14 million. And you may ask, well, market return was 12.69, and on the actuarial side, we're showing a loss. Like, where is money going? So there is $422 million of investment gains that, as part of the smoothing, they're reserved on the books to help even out any future losses. So that relationship did flip in the past year in 2024. The actuarial assets were higher, therefore there were losses on the books of about 25 million. There was a swing of 447 million to the point where now there's a gain on the books for 422. So that money is still there. It will be, if we continue to have gains, then we're going to start to smoothen that out. And to the extent there's future losses, because we've had 3 years of pretty strong market returns, to the extent that there is a future loss, we have that to even out any future losses. For this year, there is an additional transfer into the pension adjustment fund of 36 million, and we'll go through the calculation and then also the option for distribution of it.
On the market asset value ratio, there's a window there, right? That didn't look for it to be within.
Yes, because we never want the smooth asset value to get too far from the market. So we do have a 20% corridor, and to the extent that it gets too far out one way or the other, we'll cap it and keep it within the corridor.
So we're
But
pretty
of course,
close.
yeah, at the 95%, we're pretty close. And last year we were very, they were almost pretty much the same. On the other side of the equation, actuarial liabilities. Each year that we do evaluation, we'll start with the prior year liability. We roll it forward to the current year based on what we expected, based on our assumptions, and then we'll compare that to the actual liability. So in this case, the actual liability did come in 206 million higher than expected. We will go into the source of that loss, but when comparing it to a $13.5 billion liability, it's 1.5%, which we think is within reasonability range. The board last year had adopted an assumption change to reduce the discount rate of 5 basis points from 7.3% to 7.25%. That increased liabilities by 64 million, and that is already reflected in the results you will see today. Just so that, as an FYI, we're also working on the experience study, which is once every 5 years. We're working on the historical 5-year period experience study right now. We expect to be here at the March meeting to review the results of the experience study, and any assumption changes that would need to be adopted based on that would be effective for the 2026 valuation.
And I don't know how far you are into that, but are you expecting this to be changes in that, or is it too early to tell?
So we have some preliminary results, and we do have a couple of items that look like we would have to change. There are new mortality tables that are out there. It's small compared to the size of our liability. We don't think the RRP impact is going to be big, but there are a couple of changes.
Okay.
And one of the changes actually will be, we're going to dig into more, but would be also the salary increases. We've seen salary losses for 2 years straight for municipal members. And we just want to understand, is that something that's going to continue in the future? Or was this a high inflationary environment? Or is it overtime? That's just what the sources are to help us determine whether or not that's something that will continue in the future.
And when you say salary losses, you mean salary growing faster than
Higher than what we expected. So when we do the expense study, we'll review what has historically happened in the most recent period. And to the extent we've seen the increases, are those going to continue in the future as well? Then we would have to reflect them. So funded ratio, that's the ratio of assets to liability. On the smooth asset value, we went up to 65.4 to 67.7%. This is amazing progress. The last time the system had a funded ratio in that range was, I believe, 2003 was 63%, 2002 was 73%.
That was after the navigation contract.
Correct. So it's been a long path, and this is amazing progress to get to this level.
Yeah.
And, Chris is pointing out that that was with a much higher super.
Exactly. That was back at 9%. So we're at 7.3 now, or 7.25 actually. Reconciling it from last year to this year, 65.4 is where we started. The experience loss on the gate of the assets and the liabilities decreased at 1.2%. Assumption change is a 5 basis point discount rate. That decreased it further, another 0.3%. And then the progress of the pay down of the unfunded, this is based on the MMO and the expected pay down each year because the contribution consists of normal costs, amortization of the unfunded liability, and the portion of the amortization piece that pays down each year increased the funded rate to 2.4%. That's around the range we expect each year the pay down to be at. The RRP contribution, that's the contribution being paid in excess of the MMO, that increased it another 1.4%. And in past years, the city has contributed extra amounts even in excess of the RRP. This year, that was about $6 million. So whereas the funded rate is showing 0%, that's something we do track to the extent that more money is coming in than even required into the RRP. And so at the end of the year, it was 67.7%.
It's going, it's going actuary. So from 2012 to FY 2017, which is right now when the came in, the UAL increased the total debt by 26.4%. From FY 18 to FY 2025, it decreased by approximately 30%. Big swing, the RRP and the additional contributions by employees, by sales tax, by the city have a significant effect. I mean, the returns are great. Courtesy doesn't stand. UAL paid down. It's huge.
All things together, right?
Yes, absolutely right.
And the finance spread, the funded rate to the actuarial assets to liabilities versus spread on the market assets to liability. Last year, they were almost identical. Start to see a really nice spread now. Can we expect that? Is that kind of us getting over the hump a little bit?
And so I think that ratio is more to do with the market returns. And you want to be within that range, so you follow closely. There'll be a slide up ahead that will be able to show that comparison on a historical basis that will show you what that's doing. But as long as you're within that range, the smoothing is doing its job. So whether you're above or below or by 5%, that's not the point of that. The point of that is just to dampen the volatility so that the contributions don't have that same type of volatility.
So the way it works, the higher your returns, the higher that spread's going to be because you're amortizing them over a number of years. So they're not all.
Yeah, so it's amortized. So it's spread over 10 years, and it also is so. Yes, it does depend on how big that swing is, but it also depends on what historically you've been having in the books. And again, we do have an asset calculation that you'll be able to clearly see what's happening. But the point of the smoothing isn't you want to target like one being at 95% is better than being at 105 or 100%. It's more was it doing its job to reduce that volatility of contributions, and the smoothing method does do that. We can show that when we get to the historical. On the funded ratio of market assets, this is amazing. 17.8% this year. This, is the first time it's over 70% in a very long time. So I'd echo friends' comment earlier, the pay down of the sustainability, the hard work from members, from the board, from the city, and all the commitment to get on this very difficult, to steer the ship, to get on this very difficult path, to make a plan to get to 100% funded. And then now to stick to it to get to them. On the contributions for reporting purposes, we do report under MMO, which is the minimum required under Act 205, and by law the city is required to put this contribution in. The RRP, which calls for excess contributions above the MMO. And then the funding policy is an old measure that's
we continue to report on, but the city hasn't really been. The additional
It's the first time you more than that.
more than the funding policy, yes, because there was a historical funding policy based then. But right now, yeah, the largest one rolled off, I think it was 2019.
Since the RRP was things like that, it might going forward, might make sense to just lose these things from the policy. Something more the board can make that decision.
We continue to report on it. The only possible use of it is we do track those amortization by plan. So if you look at 67 versus municipal that is 87 municipal, the breakdown on MMO doesn't require us to break out the payouts by the individual plans. It's municipal, police and fire, but under the funding policy, go without look at. So that's pretty much the only area that we still use it for. So the additional contributions coming in, there's revenue coming in from sales tax that's being put into the pension fund each year. Municipal members are paying tier contributions, so the higher their pay, the higher the contribution amount. Police officers and firefighters are paying in additional contributions each year, and the city is paying an RRP, so MMO. All of these additional revenue sources were put in place back in 2016 when the pension reforms were done to specifically pay off the unfunded liability. Typically, when additional revenue sources come in, you expect there's gains under that funding policy and future city contributions will be reduced because of pushing up additional assets. But we want to make sure those additional assets are not reduced in future city contributions, but instead used to pay off the unfunded. And the mechanism to do that is by collecting these additional revenue sources each year, tracking them in a notional account. So money is still in the assets being invested, but it's being tracked in a notional account. And when we calculate the RRP contribution, we deduct that notional account balance. So the assets used for the RRP are as though this money hadn't come in, resulting in higher contributions. So the amounts for that notional account went up from 771 million as of 7/1/2024 to $1 billion in 2025. And that again is a strong statement to say this is how much additional revenue has been put in. Additional money has been coming in from members, from the city, from sales tax, and has helped capture this huge increase in funding. Contributions, MMO went down 651 million to 647 million. We expect this each year because we're paying under RRP, which is more than MMO is calling for. So each year we're going to continue to see MMO decreasing. We also look at contributions, and the city probably looks at this too, as a percent of payroll. And the contribution as a percent of payroll also went down for MMO from 29.8% to 27.1%. Like 10 years ago or so, this was close to 40%. So it's definitely going down. And the city will see the large increase in contributions once the fund is fully funded. The RRP in dollar amounts actually went up. 760 million went up to 72 million for 2027. Just a reminder, our valuation for 2025 determines the contribution for fiscal year ending 2027. There's a lag there. So when we look at it as percent of payroll, the RRP as percent of payroll actually went down. Payroll went up. Was that a question?
It was a sneeze.
Yeah. So when the dollar amount went up, payroll went up more than the increase in RRP, resulting in the as a percent of payroll. So with that, we'll jump into the historical trend.
Good morning. First, we're going to go through the historical trends for membership. We show here 10-year history of actives at the bottom in the blue bar, drop participants, term vested are the small bars in the middle, and then retirees. This includes anyone who's in pay, retirees, disabled beneficiaries. With the yellow bar on top, payroll is the black line, and it's correlating with the right-hand axis. We'll start with just the demographics. Over this 10-year period, the total headcounts have been pretty level. I think it was within a couple hundred, 2016 to 2025, for actives and retirees. So not too much is changing in terms of what the demographics of the plan are. We obviously see up top payroll coming up. It's about a little bit over 3% year over year average change. Payroll up to 2.3 billion. Versus actives of 28,866. Total population as of July 1, 2025 is just over 66,000. The number here, you'll see the 1.23 correlating to 2025 on support ratio. That's the ratio of non-active participants to active participants, excluding members in drop. You'll see 1.23 as the support ratio for 2025. This essentially means that for every one active member that's contributing to the plan, there are 1.23 inactive retirees or someone who's in pay. So that's indicative of the maturity of this plan, that there are more folks in pay versus active contributing. And usually when you see a mature plan, you see negative cash flow. So that's not the case with this plan, which is absolutely like a really, really good thing and very
It also looks like that ratio is going.
it is going down. So that was the next point that I was gonna make. So it's really on the active head count, the year over year 24 to 25, that decrease. You'll see 2021 through 2024 slight decrease in active head counts, and then 2025 the active head count actually just got back to where it was in that 2016, 17, 18, that pre-COVID kind of area. So now active counts basically back up to what they were pre-2020, and your support ratio is actually essentially 1.23 in 2020. So you pretty much got back to where the system was pre-COVID. So in terms of active head counts.
And at 1.23, that's very healthy. Typically, industry red zone is like 2.5, or we're.
And we'll see how the support ratio and the net cash flow compares against the universe public plans later.
I have a question. You probably said this, but what is the TV?
Term vested is someone who has terminated, but they haven't commenced benefits.
Okay.
So it's just something that's not working.
And then the ratio, the 1.23, that's for every active member, there's 1.23 retirees, or do they get that opposite?
The numerator up top is the retirees, so it's
And
per
then,
every
so
active.
we have more active members. Yeah.
No, there's more retired, there's more in pay than, and there's this
Okay. Yeah,
number
yeah.
here at the bottom. So non-active to active for 2025, 35,399 non-actives to 28,866 actives, as footnoted.
And then the payroll number, does that include all payroll categories, regardless of whether they're pensionables?
It's-
No, it's the pensionable.
Pensionable.
Because we only know.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Got it. Yeah. Right.
Oh, 1.23?
Yeah.
The value of the payroll.
Right, they only care about pension.
Yeah, okay.
The pensionable payroll is about 2.32.
I don't remember for all of the units, is overtime pensionable for anyone? The municipal members is included. What's that? Municipal members have overtime.
Yeah.
Okay.
Overtime is not overtime is not principal for everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I wanted. I didn't know.
It's not.
Yeah.
Uniform.
Very clear.
That's why I'm wondering who's it, who is
Non-uniform.
So only non-unit, so 33, 47,
And those
Non-rapid
classes
exams,
underneath,
but
not
then
just,
police
but
and
those
fire.
classes representing underneath 33 and 47, that may not be in the agreement, but long.
Yeah, okay. That's what because I remember the fire department wasn't pensionable.
Believe that?
I don't believe that. Well, that's fine.
Next slide. This is a great
Write
slide.
that quote down.
Let's just take a minute to look at 44.8% just 10 years ago 67.7%, over 20% improvement on the funded ratio. And hey, this whole time, you drop the discount rate, 45 basis points. So when you decrease the discount rate, that increases the liability. We just saw it's about 65 million per 5 basis points. So this is, there's actually more progress been made on the funding ratio if it was all apples to apples, if everything was still at 7.7, or if, everything was at 7.5 like it is now. It's about 3 to 5% more progress because we also tackled the lowering of the discount rate.
And how does this compare to other funds that you use?
So the improvement in funding is phenomenal. There are many systems, in fact, recently, they want to get there, but it's a very difficult, if you're in a bad shape to begin with, it's very difficult to move between all the different stakeholders involved and getting them to the table and getting a plan in place. There are some systems that were maybe started off better off before the financial crisis and are doing fine, so there are systems that on average, and we have a comparison to other systems, so funded ratio, but the improvement itself is, not common at all. And other systems are looking to Philadelphia to have this happen, so that, what you all did to get this.
Do you recall any client done this since? That's really the question. Anybody better than us? Yes? No.
Not 20%.
22.9%.
Just want to hear.
Yeah, no, I want to hear it again.
Yeah, could you repeat that?
No. Since the financial crisis,
Pretty cool.
which one are you referring?
The 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah.
That
I'm sorry, which one, the 2008?
Yes, that really did. It's a fair question. Yeah. And it's not just about funded ratio, it's also what's the risk in the system, how mature is the plan, what is the cash flow. So our fund, we had negative cash flow, a very high discovery to begin with, required contributions under MMO. Because there are some systems that finally achieved it, but didn't follow, actually pay in the required contributions that were not required. So it certainly is, it's a story, it's a story that I haven't seen this progress in. In fact, at Pyron, we talk about this as our model system. To show that our coworkers.
Yes, there's a lot to be proud about.
And I did, just to share a little bit, I can't share names, but I did get contacted by another system to ask, if we would help and how would, how did Philadelphia get to where they're at? It is, all of you should be proud of this.
That particular system may or may not have some parking lot.
But we're not needed.
We can stay on the slide, however. Slides to look at, so.
Right.
So how did this happen? Cash flows are a really big part of this funding progress. So we show contributions coming in with the green bar up top, compared to benefits and expenses being paid by the system in the red bar. And we also show the net cash flow without investment return, because we're just looking at contributions versus benefits and expenses. That's how we look at the net cash flow, right? Investment returns can be up or down. We don't want to, bank on that too much. So contributions versus benefits and expenses. You'll see the inflection point here starting around 2017, 2018. If you look at some of the other slides too, like if you were to look at that last slide, except 10 additional years, the inflection point is also around that 2017, 2018 period when things really start to get moving. And it's a combination of the 2016 plan changes. It's a combination of contributing under the RRP, sales tax, all of these things, create a scenario where you can be a mature plan and still have these positive cash flows, that start in 2018. And then with investment performance as it, has happened, that just helps the cause a little bit more. So yeah, we see it. The fact that assets aren't being drawn down to pay for these benefits and expenses, the fact that contributions are being made to fund these benefits and expenses, and that the asset base doesn't have to deplete to pay these out is really, really helping allow the asset base to grow and get to that funding progress that we just saw in the last.
That's especially important during market volatility. If you look at this black line, which is showing goes with axis on the right, is the net cash flow, the percent of market value. It was close to -4%. So 4%, the first 4% of asset return was being used to pay the benefits. And so in a year when you're having negative return, there is no 4% to dip into. You would have to break assets in a difficult market where you don't want to break those assets and sell at a loss. So that compounds the negative impact of the market volatility. So having this cash flow be taken out of the picture really helps the investments to do their job, because you're not relying anymore on having to dip into investments, different investments.
Next time we show historical asset returns. So this is the market conditions that generated the investment income bars on that previous graph. So average return over the period, 5.8%. I will note that this, includes 2001 and 2008. So two obviously pretty significant down years. But we compare this 5.8% to the plan's discount rate assumption, which is currently 7.25. You obviously see very choppy, volatile with the blue line, the market value. So again, that's why we smooth the investment gains and losses with the actuarial value, which is indicated by the green line, which is a little bit smoother. And again, we just compare it against the asset return assumption, the discount rate assumption.
So Brian, to your question here about this is where the smooth, you could see that the troughs are less and the increases are less as well. And so it really just keeps it more smoother rather than following strictly. The key point there is just stay within a reasonable range of the market value. It could be up and down, that's fine.
And as we noted, most recent market value return 12.69%, AVA return, the smooth value return 7.01% for 2020. Here we show the contributions that calculated under the MMO, RRP, and the funding policy, and then versus the actual city contribution amount. And since there is a 2-year lag on the determination of contributions, we show actual amounts through 2025 and then estimated for 2026 and 2027. I think the big takeaways from this exhibit here is that contributions are above MM. So that's the minimum. They're also above RRP in all of these years too. So contributions are being made. You're not just paying your minimum payment on your credit card, you're doing that and more, you're chipping away at that unfunded. And you'll see 2018, 2019, the gap between the orange MMO and the green RRP bars, that gap gets bigger. And the reason is because of all these additional contributions above the MMO and above the RRP sales tax coming in and just widening that gap. And the idea is that the unfunded is going to get paid off quicker and quicker as long as contributions are being made above this. And we'll see the sources of it in the next
So, and this is the first year that the RFP is higher than the funding level.
Yes.
Just one note, Rob, but I always say it's like your money, but the work you've done in ensuring that this, as chair of the board, that this board gave contributions above and beyond EPRP is appreciated.
Yeah, when you see this black line being above the green bar, those are contributions. Next.
And so here are the contributions by source. So from 2018, again, there's 2-year lag on determining these contributions. So through 2025 is actually on 26 through 27 are estimated. So we're going to start at the bottom. This gray bar at the bottom, that's the city's normal cost. This is benefits that are being accrued by active members in the system every single year. So this doesn't, as long as there are active members accruing benefits, this bottom bar, which is about 89 million for 2025, this always stays. It's to pay for benefits. The amortization payment under the MMO, the blue bar in the middle, you'll see this gets smaller, 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 a little bit shrinking every single year. This is the interest on the unfunded calculated under the MMO. So as the funded ratio improves, and as the unfunded liability shrinks, this amortization payment will shrink along with it, eventually to the point where the system is 100% funded and it's gone. And the way that this is happening, the mechanism that's allowing for this to happen, is the additional contribution under RRP and sales tax. That's the red bar up top. So that's what is being contributed over the minimum, over RRP and for sales tax. This is all those additional sources of revenue that are coming in and really helping out that pay down the UAL and then some. So like contributing the red, choose away at the size of the blue until you're left with just that bottom bar. And it's the progress, as we've already seen, like the progress of the past 10 years is very evident in the funding status, the funding ratio. But as we get to projections that Anu will go through later in the presentation, you'll really see the final, the end goal of that progress and how it's going to play out. So let's now take a look at how the unfunded liability has been changing year over year. What changes it? Obviously, investment gains and losses, liability gains and losses, assumption plan changes. So every year when the discount rate comes down 5 basis points, that increases the liability, therefore increases the unfunded. But then you have these red and green bars at the bottom that decrease the unfunded, that make you more funded, which is the contributions above MMO, contributions above RRP sales tax. This paid out of UAL. You'll see this inflection point again, 2017, 2018. That's when the cash flows went positive. That's when sales tax is kind of fully ramping up and RRP is being paid. And the progress really starts in that 2018, 2016, 2017, unfunded increased. 2018 and onward, the unfunded goes down, which means the funding status improves, which is a really powerful message. And then just looking at that exhibit summed up over 10 years by category, you'll see liability gains and losses, investment gains and losses, as well as assumption plan changes. So over 10 years, that has increased the liability or increased the unfunded liability by about 1.8 billion in aggregate. But it's completely offset and more by the contributions that have come in, that have paid down the UAL and then some. So that obviously the red and green wipe out the increases to the UAL, and then some, and you're left with, a total 10-year change of $1.6 billion in progress made to take away that unfunded liability. I'll there with any questions.
So morning, everyone. I think it's still before 12, so I can say that. So I just did want to point out kind of what Zach was saying with what I've seen with some other systems. If you're just contributing kind of what the MMO would be on this plan, you take away the green, that was 1.5 billion. The UAL has decreased by about 1.5 billion over the last 10 years. So a lot of other plans were making progress in other ways. The UAL is still staying flat, even though they're paying it down. It's kind of being offset by the assumption changes, plan changes, liability losses, and the other asset stuff. So that's kind of what I just wanted to mention that in terms of what we've seen on some other systems.
Thanks.
Yep. So I get to go through the valuation results. So coming from the history to 2025 valuation results, here we're taking a look at the demographic summary. Just a couple key takeaways. I mentioned a couple of times active participation is up. So 2-year trend of 5% from last year. I do also want to point out that's across all 3 plans. Fires up, police up, municipals up. For about 3 or 4 years during COVID, it was down for 3 or 4 straight years. So it's nice to see that progress coming back. In payment group, which is the retiree survivors, disabled members, relatively constant, about 35,000 members receiving benefits. Small chunk for terminated invested, we talked about that earlier. That's less than 1% of this population. But again, those members will go under payment at some point. Then finally, the drop members. Part of that is a function of members coming in a drop, leaving drop. So the fact that it dropped 7%, that just means more members are retiring from drop than entering drop. That's just kind of indicative of where kind of the flow is right now. Looking at the second section, that's our salaries. So these are the numbers behind the charts we talked about. Salaries past $2 billion 2 years ago. Now we're at $2.3 billion. So it is ramping up fairly quickly with the active growth, salary increases. So 9% increase from last year. Average salaries now up to 80,000. Talk about on the next slide. Of course, when we have salaries increasing more than expected, it does create a loss for the system. Then finally, benefits and payment. These are the members who are getting their monthly paychecks. That's almost $900 million now. So just under that, 893, 2.5% up from last year. This is expected. Members continue to move into payment each year. They move in with higher benefits because salaries continue to increase. So these two metrics, the benefits and the average benefits, those will increase every year. For slide 17, this takes a look at the demographic experience we talked about in terms of the liability gain loss. Here we look at changes in population. Again, that's retirement, termination, mortality, disability. We'll be coming back next month in a little bit more detail of how those different those demographic changes have changed over the last 5 years. And again, coming in with some recommendations of what we might be doing going forward. For this last year, again, looking at the various pieces, about half of that was salary related, so 96 of the 206. Again, average salaries, look at that, almost 8%. When we look at members who were active last year to this year, compares to our assumption on average, which is about 5%. Again, great for members, but again, for the system, that does create a little bit of a loss for the year. The second biggest chunk of that is decrements different than expected. So that was 73 million of the 206. That's transitional members, drops, retirements, disabilities. So in general, in the last handful of years, generally since COVID, we've seen more retirements, more members entering drop, more disabilities. That's kind of where it feeds into here. And we've just seen a little bit more of that in this time period. Then finally, the last piece I want to point out was mortality experience. So we have lost 13 million, much smaller than the other 2 buckets. Just means that there's been less mortality in the last year than expected. Again, something we will study, experience study with the new tables that have come out. So that's the liability experience. Touched a lot about for the financial experience, again, the 12.7%. Talked about that a couple of times, 7% on the ABA. We're just showing some historical returns here over a 3, 5, 10, and 20-year period. This is very subjective to the period that you choose. I just want to point out one target here. If we look at the last 5 years, again, this is kind of where we've seen that significant asset growth, about 9.6%. So that's significantly helped again with about 10% return in 5 years with that positive cash flow. Those two things have kind of factored in together and really created this push that we've seen in the last 5 years. Per return assumption, 7.25%. We've been using this flight path where we've been reducing that 5% a year. We'll discuss that again later in the presentation. And then finally, the drop account balances. This is just kind of a metric, a risk metric. Drop balances are over $200 million, represent about 2.25% of the assets. So if you were to see everyone pulling out their money at once, it would be about 2% of the assets. Okay, so slide 19, a little overwhelming, but there's a lot of numbers on this page. We won't go over them, but this kind of helps with the asset discussion that we talked about. This is how we calculate the actual value of assets. Real quickly, at the top, the market value is $9.6 billion. This is where we recognize the gains and losses over a 10-year period. So you can actually see from 2016 to 25, those are the gain or loss each year. We recognize 10% of that each year. It just kind of moving in the middle of the reason why we do this at 10% a year. 2021, we had a $1.2 billion gain. And next year we had a $1 billion loss. So if you were to actually factor that into your contributions, you see some pretty big swings. But when you do this over a 10-year period, it really helps smooth out that volatility. And at the bottom, again, you can see in the middle of the chart, about $422 million deferred gains. So the preliminary actuarial value is $9.2 billion. Final piece of that puzzle, after we take in a quarter, which is the 80 and 120%, we take out $36 million, which is the PAF transfer that comes out of the assets. And then that will go into the PAF fund for those distributions. So slide 20, this kind of ties into the assets because again, we talked about the RRP calculation. It doesn't include the additional contributions that are coming into the plan. Here you can visually see those numbers. Lines 2, line 3, sales tax, which was about 96 million last year. The additional member contributions for police and fire and tiers, 35 million. Talking about $130 million in the last calendar year. That gets added to last year's balance, which was the 770 million. You bring that forward with interest, again, you're now over $1 billion in a 10-year period of accumulating these additional funds. And then for the assets, which is shown in line 8, so instead of using the 9.16 billion for the MMO calculation, we're using 8.16 billion. So $1 billion less. And again, that is why we have a much higher pay down of the unfunded liability because that lower asset base. Slide 21, a lot more numbers here, but generally what we're just showing is the roll forward of the assets and the liabilities from last year to this year. Go to the far right column. That's our unfunded liability, which is the difference between the liabilities and the assets. Started at 4.55 billion. We increased that for the normal costs, which we talked about, the ongoing expenses, and the active pool. Take out city contributions, which include the sales tax, the additional contributions that come to the fund for employees as well as quasi employees. You add in administrative expenses. You bring this forward with an interest payment. And that gets us to our expected liability or expected unfunded, which is about 4.08 billion. We compare that to what we actually had in line 6, which was 4.3 billion. That's our $220 million loss, which again, we've already talked about. Here we can see the breakout in 206, 206 million liabilities, and 14 million for the assets.
And the expected interest at the assumed rate of return.
That's the assumed rate of return. So that would, it's like a mortgage payment, you can have to pay down for interest. That's how we're kind of. And then the last piece of that is we added the 64 million for the discount rate change that we did last year. Okay, so jumping into the key results, just couple of takeaways here. Line one, we're showing the present value of future benefits, so it's not your actual liability. This is also includes future benefits, so it's essentially the money you would need today to pay liability today, as well as future accruals for members who be working. That's where we get up to 15 billion instead of liabilities, which are closer to 13.5 billion. The current and future resources we pay for that. Because we're including future accruals that we can pay for, we include the future total costs that is being paid for in the city, as well as the employee contributions, include the assets that we have on hand, and then the amortization payments that would be expected to in the future. Line 6, just to note that the difference between the 1 and 5 for the surplus that we see there, it's just that difference in the market value versus the actual value of assets. So that's your $422 million we talked about earlier. In this calculation, we're including the market value of assets, but again, when we do the funding calculations, we're doing that on a real basis. And then finally, at the bottom, we touched on it a couple of times. We have the funding ratios on an actual basis in line 10, which was about 68%, and on a market value in line 12, which is about 71%. So don't need to go into those numbers, but if you want to specifics, we do have those numbers out there for you. The last two slides take a look at how we calculate the MMO and the RRP contributions. So this slide is the MMO calculation. Again, we talked about the city normal cost and the amortization payments. Those are the two components of the calculation. City normal cost is down in the top section. That's your normal cost plus expenses. So that's the actives and the administrative expenses, about 236 million. We take out the employee contributions, 102 million, as well as additional employee contributions, 38 million. That's just about $96 million for 2027. Would expect that to generally continue to slightly increase each year as payroll continues to increase. We expect the cost of accruals to increase, administrative expenses to go up, but it's generally a steady growth that we expect on an inflationary basis. The second component of that is the amortization payment, which is shown in the second to bottom row. Talked about that a couple of times. Amortization payment will continue to be lower as long as the city contributes on the RRP. As a result, the MMO goes down about $4 million from 651 to 647 million.
Real quick, you go back, the normal cost, I know they asked this, but there's always new players, and probably have people watching. The normal cost of 90+ million, which very slight variation. You could go back as far as you could, I can tell, and that's been steady. It's never changed. There's a fixed cost, essentially a fixed cost for the city for our pension fund, as long as we are at 100%.
Agreed. So yeah, you would see when we looked at that gray bar on the historical side, you would see slight growth, but it's back to that $100 million.
Not nearly what we're going
It
through
doesn't-
now.
it doesn't
Even
go
the 10-year smoothing,
That's
nowhere as flat as that.
correct. Yeah.
And it's a function of the funding method we use. It's called NPH normal, and it's by design expected to produce an accrual cost over the working lifetime of the member that stays level. There are other funding methods like projected unit credit where you would accrue less and then build up over time, and that you will see the same. So part of that is by design the funding method. If you have a stable population, you'd expect it to stay stable.
So, yeah, we'll talk about stability for the city's budgeting purposes. That's the key. Get to 100%, stay there.
Yes.
Which we are looking for.
You could get an AI finance director at that point. Crucial. Come on, we're good.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, you're not the only one. I've already gotten rid of Brad and Chris. And
Good.
That's great. I want to make sure I made that clear.
You can say that, we can have AI firefighter.
We can. Exactly.
You could have an AI trustee.
So,
Gotta wake the room.
You have these conversations everywhere?
Yeah, so this is the RP calculation. First two lines are exactly the same as the last page. Third line, we have the comment there that the additional contributions are not going to reduce the RP. As a result, the city normal cost is 134 million, as opposed to the 96 million that we showed on the last page. And then the amortization payment, again, that's based on the unfunded liability less that $1 billion in that notional account. So when we said the UAL was about 4.4 billion, that's kind of how we're doing the MMO calculation. You take $1 billion out of that, it's about 5.4 billion when we're doing the amortization payment for the RFP. So that's where you get the much larger contribution. And that's about 782 million, or about 135 million more than what we're showing on the MMO page. Any questions on calculations? All right. So we did change our slides around a little bit this year. I kind of really like how we're doing the risk section into the discount rate discussion. So when we talk about risk, we've identified some of these factors already in terms of the changes in the unfunded liability. The investment risk, obviously, that's on our assets. The assumption change risk, that's our changing of the discount rate every year, as well as these experience studies that we do every 4 years, which have generally been moving towards more conservative assumptions. And then there's the longevity and other demographic risk, which is generally kind of that year-to-year changes that we see in the liabilities of particular population cases. What we're going to also talk about in this section is the plan maturity measures, which we talked about a little bit in terms of the support ratio and net cash flow. That kind of helps us understand what the system's risks, what you're facing. So we're going to compare some of those, as well as the funding ratio, which we had in the presentation this year, to the public plan database. So if we jump on to the next slide. So for those of you who may not be as familiar with this, this is a database that has been tracked for the last 25 years, put together through NASRA as well as Boston College. They kind of keep these totals in their database and research dating back to 2001. There's about 230 plans now in the survey, so it's a very substantial group. It also represents about 95% of the assets as well as the membership in the United States. So this is a very significant portion of kind of what other public plans are doing out there, specifically in the United States. So this is a very good metric for Philly to use, as well as other systems that are out there. Philadelphia is included within the system, so not only are we showing the gold diamonds, which is Philly, they're also included within those 230 plans that I mentioned. So here we're showing the central 90% of the universe, from the 5th percentile at the bottom up to the 95th percentile at the top. Gold diamonds, that's for Philadelphia's. This is that support ratio that we talked about at the beginning. So number of inactive members supported by each active member. Going back to 2001, and this is where we've kind of come closer to what the averages are. This is a very mature plan. You can see the gold diamond is above the 5%. So this was in the top 5% of mature plans for this metric 5 years ago. Kind of go forward in time, it's almost the exact same number, which means it's been a very steady population. When we look at the plans in the universe, the middle, so you go between the dark blue and the dark green, that's the middle. That's been going up. So plans are becoming more mature, more members moving to payment, active population has maybe steadied off. So what we've seen is that we've come closer to the average of the 25 years.
How long does it take a plan to become mature? 20,
probably more than that. Plans maybe more like 50 plus years. So it takes quite a long time for a plan to become mature. But of course, this system's been around for a long time. This doesn't necessarily take into account, this also has newer systems in here, it has older systems. But when you look at the range, that's kind of a good metric.
And it depends if it's an ongoing population, because some system will close the plan and move down to different contributions. So in that case, it would pop up. That's all factored in. This data is so big. So all the plans from all kinds of.
Some of those shifts in advance could be important to
It's possible.
cancer.
Yeah. Tying this to the other risk metric that we'd like to look at for plan maturity is net cash flow. Talked about it a couple of times. The nice thing here is you can actually now see it back 25 years. And this is where we said historically the plan will have a significant negative cash flow. You can actually see going back to the early 2000s, it was negative 6% for a number of years. Certainly didn't help when we had the dot-com bubble, and that was kind of a big drawdown on the assets, but that negative cash flow. Again, in recent years, that is, you kind of see 2015, that's where you see the trajectory change. And the important thing to point out is, as long as the city is continuing to contribute on the RFP, we will see a relatively flat net cash flow until the plan is fully funded. Another takeaway on this chart is that, I like when you get to look at the universe. The universe of plans in the middle, it's been about negative 2% almost for 25 years. So it's really challenging, especially when there's a lot of stakeholders at the table, to change the trajectory of what the fund is currently doing. And you can kind of just see that just looking at that graph. It's almost relatively unchanged amongst systems that hold some back up. Really could be on one side of the spectrum and then look to the other. It's a very difficult task for the systems.
Some of these highlight points here, were the large scale history from that year that was included in the after the financial crisis 2008, the deferral, contribution deferral, that, contribution for the budget, and about 3K. But kind of few things here, and then in 2023, there was an additional 300 million next year above the RFP.
Slide 28, I think we talked about this separately outside of the presentation. We liked the graph so much. I think it was a great picture for the board to see as we added to the presentation here. Talk about the ABA funded ratio. Now we can kind of see how there's other public plans out there. And this is really kind of the big takeaway from the last couple of charts of, where's the payoff? This is where we've seen it. The payoff is kind of in the funded ratio. That's significantly changed over this period. And again, you can go back to 2001, probably about starting in 2004. The system was at the bottom of the light green, so basically about the 5th percentile in terms of funding for the plan. That was consistent for about 15 or 20 years. The other thing to point out is that Gold Diamond is relatively flat, so this system was about 45–50% funded from about 2009, you could say, up until about 2017, and then almost like magic, you could see that Gold Diamond just starts projecting upwards. So again, talked about there's a 20% increase over the last 10 years. But in terms of other public plans out there, you look again at the middle there, they've started out much better in terms of about 70%, I'd say, give or take, after the financial crisis of 2008. You see some slight improvement, but generally plans have just increased by a couple percentage points. You can see maybe 70 to 75 over that period. So you're still below the norm, but the amount of progress you've made to other public plans, that's where you can see it in this picture. The last thing I'm going to point out, and I don't think we're going to show it, but if you click on this link, we actually have these public plan database tools on our website. So you can go right to our website. You can check out these tools. You can click on Philadelphia, click on a variety of maturity metrics. You can bring up this chart that I just showed you here today. It's not a private chart, and you can take a look and filter on the years and see what other plans you're doing.
Let's go for about to show. So this is available to anybody if we have collaboration with the to take the data from the survey and make graphics and provide information. So this is on our website. Anybody could look at any of these things and look for your system. And we said we cover 90% of the assets across the country here. So I agree that to get the chart, we looked at the funded ratio, actuarial value. It does some graphics, you can do it over time, but if you're looking at the median plan, the funded and it's going to show you what the median plan says. You can look for Philadelphia, and it will then show you the system. So there's a lot of stuff out there that, you know, if any of you are curious to kind of see where the system compares to other systems across the country, it's easy to kind of look at about it. And we're happy, you know, if anybody's more interested in exploring these tools, we're happy to do, you know, like a webinar.
Right, so with that, I'm gonna pass back to you and we're gonna put on the list into the discount rate.
So each year, when we talk about the discount rate, the board has adopted this glide path de-risking plan, so as not to cause contribution shock to the system by decreasing a large amount of the discount rate all at one time. So each year we'll talk about, you know, the discount rate and how the system fits with other systems. This is the NASRA investment return survey, and we look at this slide each year. This has now been updated to 2025. And this is showing the distribution of this investment return assumption for public plan systems across the country. Obviously, 25 years ago, the blue bar is showing the median. Most of the systems were about 8%. Back then, we were about 9%. And over time, especially after 2009, you can see this rapid change in the trajectory of reducing discount rates. It's really to take risks off the table, because the higher the investment return assumption is chasing, the higher, the more risk that the fund needs to take. And in volatile markets and having cash flow, that could result in harming the fund more than it does. So just for where do things stand in 2025? The median rate is 7%. We're at 7.25%. And as we look, as you know, as the system actuary, we're thinking that it'd be good to get to the 7%. So continue on this glide path of reducing each year as much as possible, 5 basis points, if that's what it is, and then get to 7%. When we get to 7%, hopefully that's around the time the system is also getting to 100% funded. And at that point, we have conversations about what do we do now, because it's been very difficult to steer the ship to get to the 100% funding at a discount rate that's reasonable. And then the challenge is going to be how to preserve them. So we'll get there, but right now I think we continue on this path to get down to 7%.
We've gone, sounds like from being a full percent above the for the median to just being a 0.25%.
Correct. Yeah. So there's been huge progress there, because as I mentioned, other systems might have just dropped the discount rate, but if they're not contributing or not required to contribute, as Philadelphia is under the MMO, they may reduce the discount rate and then not appropriate enough money to put in the fund, and they just miss the contribution. They're just pushing the can down the road. So to the extent that there's a minimum required, there's a plan in place, I think that we continue that to get to 7%. Any questions on that?
I think you're going into what the question could be.
Yeah, so we look at this, you know, so showing a 5%, 5 basis point reduction. So the current valuation, the impact on the RRP would be an increase of $7 million. The unfunded liability would go up about 64 million, and the funded status would go down 0.3%. These are linear changes. You know, for small incremental changes, we could double that if you look in 10 basis points. But we do have a table that we have included a 5-year projection under what we call the baseline is the current year's RRP contribution at 7.25, and the funded ratio is starting at 759.8 million. 57.7%, what the projection would be over the next 5 years. And then we look at a 5 basis point increase, for 10 basis points, 15, and then a 25 basis point decrease. Any questions on we can look at this, in our live projection model. So we'll switch over here to our live projection model. Just as a refresher, so what we're showing here, similar to the assets and liabilities, we looked at the historical 10-year. Now we have a projection here for a 20-year projection going forward. So this top chart is similar to the historical. Gray bars are the liabilities, the lines are the assets, blue is actuarial, green is market. And they're very close. It's hard to see them apart, but when we see, if we look at different scenarios, we'll be able to see the changes there. The bottom graph shows you the contributions. The red portion is what's required in MMO. The blue portion are the expected sales tax revenue amounts based on what we've been provided as projections. And the black bar is the extra contributions that are coming in from municipal members, police officers, firefighters, and the RP contribution is the blue line. So you see the blue line is above the MMO because until the system is expected to 100% funded, the RP would continue. Up top here, we have the funded ratio starting at 67%. Under this scenario, by 2028, we hit 80% funded. So, you know, right here, 3 years coming out is 1% based on this projection, and fully funded by 2032. This is assuming that contributions would come in under RRP, and that each year we would earn the 7.25% investment discount rate assumption as we you know, well, we know we're not going to hit 7.25 each year, so we can look at how the variations that impact the contribution. One thing I'll note here, we're starting here with the RRP, but let's look at MMO. And it had the city been contributing on the, or switches to contributing to the MMO, you'd see that now we're 3 years later to reach full funding, and 80% is 2029. So of course, the RRP contribution being above the MMO is a huge, you know, it's a key, one of those funding discipline items that stay on track, it gets you to 80%. So any questions before, I mean, we could look at some historical slides to illustrate how this contribution can change, because all of this is assuming, as I said, every single year we're going to earn a certain quarter. If we go back to, I mean, I was playing with some numbers and saying, what if we went, you know, there's a lot of talk about the AI bubble and with the dot-com bubble, if we went to before 1998, where would we get to, or what does it look like, right? So if
Turn that up, Josh.
Yeah, you put in your hot seat.
Turn the heat all over.
You put in the hot seat.
So this is based on a 60-40 portfolio return. If the historical assets, when we went back to what the market returns were in 1998 and replicated what would happen, you can see here now that the market value is, you know, there's more, that's the green line, it goes up and down with the returns, and the smooth asset value is a little bit straight, or of a straight line. The funded percent is to reach 100% is 2033. And I can look at some of the scenarios that can show, and really here, down here, you can see how it does affect the contributions, which is why it's really important right now to stay on track to get to the 100% funded. Because the, you know, the asset markets will be volatile, and we want to make sure that we can plan for that. I can show, I don't know if there's any other scenarios that anybody would like to look at. This is 7.25% discount rate. If we went back to our assumption and change this to 7.2%. And, you know, 80%, 100% funded are still about the same. There are higher contribution requirements under RRP, that's showing you for the comparison, and if the RRP was unchanged and the new RRP with the new scenario over this period, you became an extra 31 million for 5 years. Of course, with the 2026, we'll have the expense study that will also be impacting the assumption changes next year evaluation. Is there anything else you'd like to see with the projection model?
It's like we're good.
So coming back to so, the board practice of doing the annual stress testing, have they codified it? Is something that they're required to do, but of course, we've been doing this since day one, like in reviewing stress testing. This just shows with a varied return, where each year's return is different, but the average is 7.25, that could still change the contributions. So on average, you make 7.25 in the long run, but not everything.
And that doesn't really have an impact on when you get 5%.
In that scenario, it doesn't. Of course, if you play with these numbers, that you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then moving on, any questions on that before we move on to pension adjustment fund? As we discussed, there was a pension, there was a distribution into the pension adjustment fund, and the PIF is in the code to provide any time that there's excess investment returns from the market return. Part of those returns are shared with membership through distributions for the pension adjustment fund. The code does require that the smooth asset value for PAF purposes is based on a 5-year smoothing period, not a 10, which is used for valuation. So on a 5-year smooth asset value, the return was 9.07%. And to the extent that that was higher than 100 basis points above the assumption the prior year was 7.3, so 100 basis points higher would be 8.3%. Because that 9.07 is higher, $26 million do enter the PAF this year. This is just going into the contributions. We start with 7.77 million that had been in the PAF. The return, the 9.07 is compared to the 8.3, so there's an excess return of 0.77%. Half of that is used for transfer amounts of 36 million. Right? So we now have a PAF balance of 45 million. The board, when there has been PAF concerns, has typically reviewed what are the options. Typically, the board will decide on what the distributions are going to be. In the past, the membership groups that have been considered are retirees that are in payment, disabled retirees, and surviving spouses and beneficiaries of retirees that have passed. Some of the alternatives could be a one-time lump sum amount, which has been what has been done before, would be a one-time lump sum amount based on how many years you've been in payment and how many years of service you may have had before you retired. So we'll just jump to what was done before, and then we'll go to the live calculator if there's an interest in exploring how to do it. So the last time the PAF distribution was done, and I think this has been the same process for probably the last 2 distributions. The total 47 million is spread over 2 years, so 50% in the first year, 50% in the next year. Any retiree that's in payment, has been in payment for 10 years, is eligible to receive this because this is sort of a part of it.
Spread over 2 years, we had much larger than that.
In the past, it was 7 years.
Prior to that.
Okay. Okay, so we could do the full amount if that's what. We would calculate a multiplier that would be dependent on the number of years of service you have, so credited service in the system, and the number of years in retirement. If you're a disabled retiree that has a service-connected disability benefit, then you'll be given a minimum of 10 years of service credit. And for beneficiaries and survivors, we'd be looking at the date from the eligibility is based on the death of the members. So I'm going to go to, we do have a calculator here. I apologize, the numbers are a little small, but any yellow cells here are numbers that we can change. We're starting for 7/1/2025 with 45 million in the pension adjustment fund. If the 10-year cutoff is still what you would consider, we have here June 30, 2015. So anybody that came into payment July 1, 2015 onward would be eligible. This is where we set the 10-year, if that's something that still for a minimum service, but service connected disability, they would get 10-year service credit.
They still have to be in payment for 10 years though, before they be out,
Yes,
but they would get 10 years of credit as
They
part of the equation.
correct.
Why aren't drop years, part of it?
Drop years count for service credit, they would count for both because members are active. And then also it affects eligibility because you may enroll in drop when you're still active.
Would you consider retirees a parent drop? Like, why not drop?
No,
No. They have to be off the payroll to be considered retired.
they're working.
I thought,
So they are.
Yes, they do.
But consider retired or pension.
For pension.
For pension purposes. But not for, right. I have just a question.
An estimated value based on evaluation data. When we do this actual calculation, we'll get the membership data from the city for the eligible group, but this is just so we have an estimate that we can talk about. So eligible, we have 14,200 retirees, disabled, all of them combined with 23,856 that would be eligible based on the 10-year service eligibility. The service years here by group in total, we have 530,000. And then retirement years of 484. So the.
And then,
Mhm.
if you change that 50% to 100%.
Yes, that's exactly what I was getting to. So now changing this to 100%, we would then be distributing 45 million. We've rounded this, but we'd be distributing the full 45 million. And if we did that and use the same criteria we've used before, the multiplier is about 43.38. It would be the same for service years and for retirement years. There are some of the other options, if you would like to consider, can I go through the options or are we leaning toward what was done before?
So what would happen if you take the people's service connected disability off?
Oh, if we didn't give them the minimum, then
Yeah,
we would have, they would just get whatever service years they have. I mean, there's not a large group, we didn't really see it change a lot. Yeah, so it's not a huge group.
okay.
This option line is weird.
No, so this are right individuals, so we could say, well, we want to use 50% of the total land balance for service or retirement with changes. If you said, we don't care about retirement, or sorry, let's do 0, okay, because that's 50%, but we don't care about the service, we just care how long you've been in payment, then you would get $92 based on your retirement years. So that's just an option we have, and 50% is showing we're gonna give it equal value, then accredited service. Here is a different way, you know, where we could
Multiply is 46,
43.48
40.
is the estimate of it on the actual data would calculate the real number, that would be the estimated number. We have the option here, could check if each member got 1 extra month of benefit, then you get a full, you know, an extra monthly benefit amount, depending on the amount of your actual retirement benefit is, and that would be about 45 million as well. Or we could increase the benefits for the future, so 0.5, that's 0.1. So a 1% increase in the benefit for all future years would increase the total benefit by 50. So any questions?
Okay.
I will end with the same slide. Where we began, where we end up. No other questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great as usual. We'll let something.
I'm sorry. The third option you presented was an ad hoc adjustment of benefits. That would remain in effect until I passed away, right? That's not a one-time. Kind of the answer.
Correct.
It'd be a roughly 1% increase to their benefit permanently as long as they're receiving a benefit.
That's third option, right? For everybody or just for,
It would just be for the groups qualified, it wouldn't be for the whole system.
And that would still be the same cost to the,
That's what I want to clarify here. I think it has to be, right? It has to be 45
Yeah, it is.
million.
So the 1.1% was 44 million.
It would only benefit the people who are eligible. If I'm not eligible, even though I'm a pensioner today, I do not see the increase.
Yeah.
That you would if you're eligible.
and that's based on our mortality assumptions and, right, so if those assumptions change, the cost
Yeah,
would
so,
change.
so.
so would that
It's just
change,
In the
based on people
future.
who are in paper time.
so would that change? Every year, if the dollar amount change on the PF?
Well, if we got another PAF next year, or any future year, it would compound on top of that 1% if we chose the same option, depending on the numbers. So theoretically, their pension could continue to increase every time there's a PAF.
But they wouldn't do both. Or you proposing to do both? You wouldn't go like be one or the other, right? That's a matter.
Yeah, it's the same pot of money. I think you'd have to
Be one
decide,
or the other.
yeah, lump sum versus annuity.
So we're not suggesting one option or another, we're just showing you guys obviously the various options. you can choose from.
Percentage just.
I would think if they missed mortality, then yes, that would be right.
And so,
Would you assume?
You have to be paid.
right, so if you do the 1%, it's gonna increase the benefit forever. And in the future, if there is a mortality impact or whatever else, that 44 million could cost the system more because it's based on the current assumptions right now.
Would that create a bigger benefit for people that are getting paid more?
So we actually.
It
depends on the benefit.
But it'll create better benefit for people who get paid less.
No, so it's 1% of the benefit, so if you're already.
Yeah, but you already got people that's been out 10 years or more, that's getting less, that's getting very less. You got people that's only get like $500 a month. You got people that's not getting $1,000 a month. So it'd be a better benefit for them. I mean, it'd be a better benefit for all the families.
Right.
It's not getting as much as you just walk.
I mean, the dollar will be higher for people, they're getting, that have a bigger budget.
Yeah, but it's also be a steady amount for those that are getting less and not reaching.
Everyone would benefit.
Everyone.
I just think that the 45 million more, the people that are getting more money rather than just the.
A flat dollar amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
$5
Smaller.
Yeah.
pension.
The
$42.
For the same dollar amount, like the cost of living, like Social Security, right? They get a flat dollar amount, like forever, regardless, so they know that they're getting an increase whenever, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So yes, it would benefit, but it would benefit everybody, because you got people that's been out, or survivors, or beneficiaries, that's getting a pension, but they're not getting that much of a pension. And, you know, you
The
have,
things are smoothing.
right,
Why do we smooth these assets, these losses, these gains? Keeps it more stable.
Right. But I would want to wait till we see.
Or maybe show examples.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'll give an example, but I cannot get the.
Less of that.
Something
Yeah,
that.
I think that would be.
47,
So yeah, we want to see.
lower paid pensions get less money.
Yes.
But they don't get, but they,
Everyone goes 1%.
I could go the other.
But that
I think we want to see
1%,
that
that's
first.
100,000. The greater dollar amount, 1%.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes, but at least it's a steady.
We have like 4 conversations going, so, yes.
For change.
So let's just look at somebody who I do have an example, but I apologize if we get back on. But if we look at someone who has 30 years of service credit, 20 years of retirement, so you've been in payment 20 years, and your current monthly benefit is $2,000. Then under the current option of the option 3, those 43 multiplier for each of those, it would go from 2,000 to 2,174. Or no, they would have a one-time 2,174 payment.
Right.
But if we did that 1%, they would get $2,022 for the rest of their life.
A $22 increase on a monthly basis versus the lump sum.
Of
It's
2,174.
taxed more too. from the taxable because it's added to the, so it's added into a regular pay. I mean, regular pension. So the normal pension of $2,000 plus $21,000, the tax pay is going like that, right? So you ain't gonna see $2,100. No,
The bet is they stay alive for 10 years, they win the bet,
right?
right? I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
What benefits the members the most.
Right.
That's the, I think that's the bet in 2174, you're talking about a 10-year break-even point there.
But like Rob said, let's see what the experience does. Because that's one of the things I was talking about before, is it better to do a COLA and base and go evenly than keep doing the pay adjustment fund. Whereas one year they at 45, next year we at 65, you gotta split it, whatever like that. So, I mean, to some people, getting a $22 monthly increase may mean the cost of not going to the dollar store. It's now no longer the dollar store.
Same member, 30 years, 20 years in retirement would have seen multiple PAFs at this point. They'd be up hundreds of dollars.
Right.
We stuck to that theory.
Right.
So I don't know if we can isolate 1 year because I think it would be a plan versus a.
Wouldn't that be interesting to see, take a retiree, take them over like the last 15 or 20 years
That's a great idea.
and see what their pension
What it is.
will look like under each
With the
scenario.
scenarios.
Because initially, we was trying to go for a cost of living. And administration would give us a cost of living, so we settled for the pension adjustment fund based on the criteria we had planned. So the issue was in 1998, when we went to the administration, we wanted to do a cost of living because we did have people out there who benefits were very, very low. So that was the original cost, but then we settled for the pension adjustment fund based on racial and division and stuff, the criteria.
And if you have that before the next meeting, would be great if you could send it so we can look at it before.
Yeah, there's so many winners and losers because look at, depending on how many
Right.
years of service you have, so
Yeah,
somebody, I mean, typically your longer service, you can have a high benefit, but then how many years have you been in retirement?
right. So maybe when you send the scenario, show who would be winners and who would be losers, so we can understand that.
Or we could show an example. Right, because, so if the distribution, typically the timing of that, I think the check is sent out in April, is that right?
Yeah.
Right?
June,
Okay.
June, right?
Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, once a decision is made, then we'll look for the data itself, for the actual ownership data listings, or that meets those qualifications. Which, that takes some time to collect, and then we.
And I assume in terms of your projection funding percent, doesn't make a difference between the two, that you're,
Before, the 45 million is already out of. the-
Yeah, so it doesn't, right.
It doesn't affect. It doesn't affect the funded ratio because our assets do not include that to begin with. But of course, if you did the 1% and that, the cost of that right now is 45 to 44 million. But if it changes in the future, that would be. So that introduces some risk to the. There's some risk that adds a little bit of risk, right?
but in your projection now would be the same. You're assuming now they might have been saying.
Yes.
How can you make the argument that the pension fund would hold $4 for longer? To benefit from an investment perspective. Instead of giving out 45, we're gonna give out $45 million in June, or we're gonna give out a much smaller portion of 45. We would keep the difference in the fund invested as we earning, investment gains. Fair statement.
Yes, and it depends on the market, right? So.
Well,
if
it
it
could
was
be
down,
loss.
then, yeah.
We have Chris. We have Chris.
Long term, that's true.
And we're Marquette, Dana. Oh, yeah, let me see, we got Marquette, yeah. We got them.
Just another thing to know. The way that the smoothing works right now, there's enough in the 5-year smoothing method where there's enough gains that have been met also that should the fund return 7.25, which is our assumption, there will be another PF distribution next year. Now, that's just all things equal, but our baseline assumption, baseline projection is showing, I think 20 million might be going in if we again hit to 7.25 in this third and order to do. Do we have a year?
Chris can do that in his sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris just said it out, new 1 year.
10:26.
They do smile.
I'm okay.
Any other questions? So you'll send us that analysis at some point? Next one.
Yes, in the next few days, hopefully next
Okay.
week. We
Okay,
can show you
great.
some examples, just to show different levels. Or we can look at the averages. So, you know, what's the average service, what's the average,
Yeah.
retirement years for these individuals.
Other questions about that? And then the other thing we talked about before is the discount rate. Any discussion there, any thoughts?
How long range, yeah?
Hmm?
What the rate of return?
Yes.
So, I'll make a motion that we go with the return by 5 basis points, 7.25 to 7.2.
There a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Ah.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything, for the wonderful questions.
We have to go down.
For next year.
They'll be in here.
So we want to set a meeting about subcommittees or we just trust, I don't know if you like to trust, you know, I think they lean on us a little bit, you know. Maybe we get
If you do all those things a little different now. Potentially, you're gonna to the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
probably would want to.
Yeah, you did, yeah. That's why it's a little different.
So you wanna do it after, you wanna look at it before the study, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think so.
If that gives us the meat.
Yeah. Yep. Keep going. All right, sorry, what? No, go ahead, Grant.
What, who you are in the supplement? I think two elected and then Jackie and Charlie.
I'm good with that.
That's fine, I see.
I'm good with that.
Are you good with that, Jackie? Okay.
Always, yeah.
But when I heard correct, since I wanted to add a note on the 7.25, I just said, here distribution is after next year, the following. But in the next few years, we're expecting if the assets continue.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Let's go to agenda 3. Is local brokerage report.
Yep, so, fourth quarter, just a reminder. On an aspirational basis, funds, public market managers are encouraged to direct 35% of their trades to local minority or woman-owned brokers subject to pricing and best execution. For the fourth quarter, on the equity side, 50% of the trades went to qualifying firms, 53% for the year to date, which is a very strong year. On the fixed income side, 34% for the quarter, 28% for the year. On a totally unrelated question, happened to look at
First thoughts and the like.
I looked at minutes for a totally unrelated purpose yesterday from 15 years ago. And the numbers have basically tripled on the diversity rate in maybe 15 years. It was somewhere between 12 and 17% in 2011, depending on the metric you're using. And now on the equity side, we're over 50%. So that's, I would consider that pretty good. Yeah, pretty good progress from there.
When the,
Yeah, question.
You're talking about Causeways a little bit,
yeah,
although I'll follow up with them, Carol, they normally they pretty good. But we'll put them. In terms of the investment returns. We should have gotten, updates yesterday, just the estimates we just went over. Through Tuesday, we were at about 10.66% fiscal year to date. But through the month of January, positive month for the fund, 2.3%. A one-year return of 14.8. And fiscal year to date to January, 9.1. Only manager, we can, we're keeping we noticed that a difficult month was Sierra. Their long-term numbers still look pretty good, but we're following up with them on their, shorter-term struggles.
But nothing in
Their process or anything leads us to be concerned, overly concerned at this point.
And those are hard month that we expect that. Yeah.
They're one of the most volatile managers, given that they're the only hedge fund or long strategy that we have. The other two things that fell under the, they're directly related, Marquette, Alberto's here, they put together two memos, which you should have received, should have received updates to those yesterday. But it's about the RRP and the proposed rebalancing. So starting with the RRP, as you know, as Actuary just talked about, every year the city contributes a set amount of money, the bulk of which comes in mid-March. This year, we're expected to receive a little less than $571 million in mid-March. Cash has continued to yield roughly 3.5%, close to 3.6 this morning. And so we've been deliberate with the board's approval about how we invest or pace the investments, become closer to our asset allocation. We're recommending, along with Marquette, from the RRP, keeping around $271 million, the RRP proceeds in cash, bring cash close to the 4% target, with a slight overweight of about a quarter of operating expenses, and then the remaining $300 million we recommend allocating to investment grade fixed income, as discussed in the table. We recommend doing that in 3 deliberate phases, where we would report to the board of between meetings and at meetings about how the pacing was going, and if we see any, reasons, market conditions, anything that would cause us to change. The money would be split, as noted in the table, between Garcia, the Rumline, War Bond account, Longfellow, MetLife / Living Circle, and Brandon. And then you would see the resulting portfolio weights on the second page of the February 24th.
We did revise them with some updates that Chris is actually referencing this.
Yeah, there's 2 members, so I'm representing.
You want to walk through what you, the update.
The updates.
This one here.
And so, Rob, the updates didn't change the number so much.
Right,
as the
right.
analysis.
Yeah.
You had asked, and some other folks had asked, how we and Marquette arrived at the manager allocations that we did. And that was a combination of considering how much the managers already had, and more importantly, how much risk the managers were able to take. So, where they could go out and build